actions will be checked by Congress, but also to ensure that NLRB cannot dictate which state an employer can locate jobs in the United States. At a time when 14 million workers are unemployed, we must get federal agencies like NLRB out of the way and clear the path for job creation. I yield back.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from South Carolina reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I remind my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that it's September. When are you going to bring a jobs bill to the floor? When are you going to bring legislation that's going to help put people back to work during this difficult economy? At this time, I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio.
The gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 1 minute.
Well, I don't mean to contradict my colleague, but the Republicans do have a jobs plan. Now, it's true that Majority Leader Cantor kicked off the week by saying, not a penny for infrastructure. We don't want to just build things in America. We don't want to invest. That doesn't put people to work. You know, the $50 billion the President proposed, that would create about 1.5 million private sector jobs in the construction industry. But they're not interested in that. They do have a jobs plan. Snakes. Yes, snakes. Yesterday, in the Oversight Committee, they held a hearing similar to what we're talking about here today on a job-killing regulation being proposed by the Obama administration. Keep out invasive species, giant pythons, which are taking over the Everglades. The Republicans say that is a job-killing restriction. Just think of all the jobs related to snakes. First, there's the importer of these invasive species. Secondly, we sell them. Then there are people who raise things for them to eat.
To learn about snakes.
Then things for them to eat. And then when they escape, we hire people, pest control eliminators, to go out and try and find them, or when people abandon them. What a jobs creator. No, we're not going to rebuild our infrastructure. We're not going to try and, continue to have fair wages for people who build the best airplanes in the world, Boeing. No, those things are off the table as far as the Republicans are concerned. It's job-killing regulations. That's what's hurting America. Come on, guys, get real. Let's rebuild America. Let's invest. Let's pay workers a fair wage. You know, when a worker earns a fair wage, they can afford to go to the small business down the street and patronize them and buy their goods. And then maybe someday, if you stop these these job-killing trade deals, they'll be able to buy goods that were actually made in America with their decent wages at an American company. Get real.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Mike Pompeo.
The gentleman from Kansas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you for yielding, and thank you for your hard work on this important piece of legislation. You know, in Kansas, we build airplanes with American workers. The Boeing company's got a big facility there. Indeed, last night on a telephone town hall, had a worker from Boeing call in. He was very worried about his continued employment right in Wichita, Kansas, and in America. He was worried because this administration has taken actions to destroy manufacturing and aviation manufacturing here in America. I rise in support of this rule and the underlying legislation because the NLRB has no business telling the Boeing company that wants to invest hundreds of millions of its own dollars, not taxpayer dollars, its own dollars, creating jobs in South Carolina. What's next? What next? Attack on Kansas? An attack on aviation workers all across America? We need to stop this piece of we need to pass this piece of legislation immediately and ask the President to sign it. It's too important to American workers to allow the NLRB to continue the big government policies of this administration. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from South Carolina reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 1 minute. Mr. Speaker, we should be talking here on the floor and debating and considering an infrastructure bill to put people back to work. We should be taking up the entirety of the President's jobs proposal that he delivered in the speech a week ago. We should be taking up things that will actually help this economy and put people back to work. And instead, we are dealing with a bill that will make it easier and more likely for U.S. corporations to ship U.S. jobs overseas. And this is a bill that creates a new race to the bottom for American workers' rights, wages, benefits, and working conditions, and it is bad for this economy. Why do my Republican friends continue to insist that the only way to deal with our economic problems is to lower the standard of living and the quality of life for American workers. Why are all the tough choices that are being made on the backs of American workers? We can do much better in this country. We need to be focusing on jobs, not on this stuff.
The gentleman kneels back his time and reserves. The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Steve Palazzo.
The gentleman from Mississippi is recognized for 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate it. I hear across the aisle my colleagues are talking about, what have the Republicans done to create jobs? Point out where we've created a job. Well, I don't think it's the government's responsibility to create jobs, but it is our responsibility to foster a healthy business climate in this nation to where entrepreneurs and small business owners can go out and create jobs, expand, increase the benefits and the pay of their employees. But you're not going to do that if you increase their taxes. You're not going to do that if you have unelected bureaucrats running around increasing job stifling regulations and circumventing Congress's efforts to create and foster an atmosphere in this country to create jobs. You're not going to do that if we continue to have frivolous litigation that's, all these things taken together develop a certain amount of uncertainty in our nation, and capital sits on the sidelines or it goes overseas to a more friendlier job creation environment. I'm one of those 22 proud right-to-work states. Mississippi, we love the high-tech jobs we're getting in the advanced manufacturing jobs in the Department of Defense, aerospace industry, shipbuilding. We like jobs in Mississippi, and this Protecting Jobs and Government Interference Act will prohibit the NLRB from telling private sector companies from where they can or cannot locate. We must restrain them. We must stop this because the jobs, the industries that we've collected over the past several years in the state of Mississippi, I firmly believe these companies would not have located either to the United States or they would have not located to my state if it wasn't for the right that we have a great workforce and we're a right-to-work state. We would have lost these jobs forever. We would have never seen them. They'd have left America or they'd have stayed in the foreign country they came from. We like to work in Mississippi. We like jobs. We want more of them, not less, and I yield back my time. Thank you.
The gentleman from Mississippi yields back. The gentleman from South Carolina reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as time as I may consider.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the gentleman talks about creating a healthy business climate. I don't know how we're creating a healthy business climate by passing a bill that makes it easier and more likely that U.S. corporations will ship U.S. jobs overseas. After more than 200 days in the majority, House Republicans have passed no bills, none, no bills that create jobs. Moving instead on job-destroying legislation that could cost up to nearly 2 million jobs, with more to come. This week, to make matters worse, we're taking up this legislation that will encourage the shipping of jobs overseas, and a bill that will weaken the middle class. Instead of creating jobs and strengthening the middle class and protecting workers' rights, the Republicans are making it easier for corporations to send American jobs overseas. And it allows employers to punish their employees for simply exercising their rights to organize, to demand better benefits and safer working conditions, to ensure a full day's pay for an honest day's work. I mean, that's what this bill does. In 2000, the National Labor Relations Board was able to force a company to bring jobs back to the United States from Mexico, as the company was charged with shipping jobs to Mexico in retaliation against workers seeking to organize a union. Under this Republican bill, American workers would lose this protection. Again, their plan for the economy is all about lowering the standard of living, lessening the quality of life for American workers while protecting those who are most fortunate in this country, those who head up the big companies. We should be debating on this floor today the President's jobs bill. If my Republican friends don't want to vote for it, they don't have to. But that's the legislation that should be brought before the members of this Congress today, not this bill, a bill that punishes American workers. Enough. You've been punishing American workers since you took the majority. Enough is enough. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Robert Hurt.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I thank the gentleman from South Carolina for his leadership on this important issue. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 2587, the Protecting Jobs from Government Interference Act. Over the past 2.5 years, this administration has vastly expanded the size and scope of the federal government and supported policies that have destroyed jobs, stifled investment and innovation, and slowed our economic recovery in Virginia's 5th District and across the country. One of the most recent and troubling examples of this government overreach is the latest move by the unelected National Labor Relations Board to block Boeing from creating thousands of jobs in South Carolina. This kind of government intervention is a direct attack on our economic freedom and has disastrous effects on 5th District Virginians and all Americans. It has the potential to cost thousands of jobs at a time when we need jobs most. It dangerously and unacceptably inserts the federal government into the business decisions of private companies, and it threatens to undermine the economic competitiveness of all states, such as Virginia, that have right-to-work laws. Being the northernmost right-to-work state on the East Coast has helped make Virginia the best place in the country to do business and has helped promote job growth and economic investment across the 5th District and our Commonwealth. At a time when millions of Americans are out of work and unemployment remains unacceptably high, right-to-work states should not be penalized by an intrusive and overbearing federal government for their ability to attract new business, investment, and jobs. As a part of the House's job creation agenda, H.R. 2587 would remove the federal government as a roadblock to job growth by preventing the NLRB from dictating where employers and private businesses can set up their operations, putting our economic recovery back where it belongs, in the hands of the people instead of the federal government. If we are serious about getting our economy back on track, we must support these kinds of policies that help restore certainty to the marketplace and provide our true job creators with the confidence and freedom and opportunity necessary to do what they do best: innovate, grow their businesses, and get America working again. That is why I'm proud to co-sponsor H.R. 2587, and I urge my colleagues to support this bill. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back my time.
The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Hurt, yields back his time. The gentleman from South Carolina reserves, and the gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
May I inquire from the gentleman from South Carolina how many more speakers he has?
I have none.
Okay, then Mr. Speaker, I'll yield myself the balance of the time.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, let me state for the record that this bill is not a retaliation against right-to-work states. I'm not a big fan of right-to-work states in terms of how they treat workers and those who want to organize unions. But this bill is really about protecting workers and from corporations that retaliate against them simply for demanding their rights and organizing for their rights. The Republican bill changes the rules mid-trial to benefit a particular Fortune 500 company, Boeing, but this bill has wide-ranging repercussions for American workers. This bill does not protect or create jobs. It just doesn't. It forces American workers to fight over existing jobs by giving up their rights and underbidding each other. It's a race to the bottom. The Republican bill makes it easier to ship U.S. jobs overseas. There's no question about that. The Republican bill creates an open season for CEOs to punish workers for exercising their rights. Again, this is a further assault on the rights and protections that workers have fought for so hard for so many decades. And this bill undermines the duty to bargain in good faith. This is an anti-union bill, no question, among other things. The bill also encourages law-breaking and intimidation by employers. It removes a key disincentive against employers who unlawfully threaten employees with job loss during organizing drives. And the Republican bill creates a new race to the bottom for American workers' rights, wages, benefits, and working conditions. We're going in the wrong direction with this bill. This bill is one more assault on American workers, on the American middle class. Time after time after time, the Republican leadership has stood up for big business and against the American middle class. Higher gas prices. Republicans protect big oil's tax breaks, do nothing to help the average consumer. Health care coverage for our kids through the age of 25. Republicans side with the health care companies that put profits over patients. With this bill, Republicans are promoting job creation overseas by allowing companies to move overseas in retaliation of workers who are exercising their own legal rights. Not only that, this bill goes back in time and applies this bill retroactively. This is just like changing the value of a touchdown in the middle of the Super Bowl simply because you don't like to score the game. This bill would be a joke if it weren't so serious. I would urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. This is not about protecting right-to-work states, and really this is not even about unions. This is about the rights of workers in this country. This is about protecting American jobs. This is about urging companies to invest in the United States and not making it easier for them to create jobs overseas. We're in a difficult economy right now, Mr. Speaker. We should be debating on this floor the President's jobs bill. Every day we should be doing something about jobs. And instead, here we are in September. My Republican colleagues have done nothing. They've done nothing except continue an assault on middle-class families. Today it's workers. I mean, they're going after Medicare in the Ryan budget. Their leading Republican presidential candidate is talking about eliminating Social Security. All the protections, all the rights that middle-class families have fought for and have won that are essential to a decent quality of life, they're trying to take away. Enough. I would urge my colleagues to vote no on this closed rule and no on this bill. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, yields back his time. The gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Scott, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I tell you, my good friend from Massachusetts continues to talk about the President's jobs plan that is nothing more than a brand spanking new stimulus plan, spending $467 billion by increasing taxes on everyone, including the middle class. I cannot find it in my heart to say to Mr. McGovern that the President's plan has any opportunity of passing in this House. Because the bottom line is simply this: we ought to spend our time focused on the things that we have in common. It is time for the games to stop. We should look at the President's plan and pick out those parts of the plan that we agree with. We should start by talking about having an opportunity to work on corporate tax reduction, flattening the tax rate for our corporations. We have the second highest tax rate in all of the world, and this environment creates an unlevel playing field for America's job creators.
Will the gentleman yield?
Certainly.
I'm just curious. Why don't we get a debate a bill on this floor that helps create jobs? Why don't you bring the President's plan to the floor and let's have it out?
Our President wants an up or down vote on this one package. We believe that the fastest and most effective way to show the American people that partisan politics is over and that we're now focused on the American people, we will take those parts, those aspects of the President's bill that we agree with, like regulatory reform, like we're doing today, and simply say to the American people that we're listening. We will take, without any question, an opportunity to debate the necessity of reducing the corporate tax structure to make America's corporations more competitive. Mr. Speaker, I sincerely hope we can move past the politics and the games which so often sidetrack things in Washington and pass this important legislation here today. This is not a question of pro-union, I agree with you, or anti-union. It is a question of right versus wrong. The NLRB has plenty of tools at its disposal to protect workers and hold employers accountable for unlawful labor practices. There is simply no reason it should have the power to dictate where a private business can establish its workforce. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time, and I move the previous question on the resolution.
Gentleman yields back his time, all time having expired. The question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, on that, I demand the yeas and the nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote. Pursuant to Clause 8 and Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on ordering the previous question will be followed by 5-minute votes on adopting House Resolution 372, if ordered, and suspending the rules and passing H.R. 2867. This is a 15-minute vote.
So the House taking their first recorded vote of the day, a procedural vote on the rule for debating a bill to limit the authority of the National Labor Relations Board. This is the result of the NLRB taking legal action against the Boeing Company after it moved from Washington State to South Carolina. The NLRB alleging that the move is an attempt to get around the union, and it's asking a judge to require Boeing to open a manufacturing line in Washington State. Final vote is expected about 1 o'clock this afternoon. This is the only legislative work for the day. The House is not scheduled for legislative action tomorrow. This is a 15-minute vote, and while this vote is underway, last week President Obama offered his jobs plan to a joint session of Congress, and today House Speaker Boehner is giving the GOP jobs plan in a speech at the Ronald Reagan Building here in Washington. We got a preview of the plan during this morning's Washington Journal.
Felicia Sonmez, who is covering Congress for that newspaper, about Speaker Boehner and his job speech. Felicia, thanks for being with us this morning.
Hi, Susan. Good morning. Great to be with you.
The folks at CQ today have a front-page story that says Boehner's speech may set the tone for the jobs debate. Give us the logistics for this speech. Where is it going to be held, and what do we know about what the Speaker's intentions are?
Well, the House Speaker, John Boehner, he's planning to give a big economic speech today at about 12:30 p.m. Before the Economic Club of Washington, which is a group of business leaders here in the Capitol. And he'll be talking to them about his vision for where the economy and where the jobs conversation should go. This speech comes directly 1 week after President Obama delivered his address before a joint session of Congress to lay out his vision for job growth. And the Speaker today is expected to lay out several plans. He's going to give his weight to comprehensive tax reform, which is something that leaders of both parties have advocated for. He's also going to advocate for entitlement reform, which, as you know, House Republicans have been pushing for the past several months during this Congress. And perhaps most importantly in this speech today, he's going to lay down a line for the Joint Deficit Reduction Committee, this bipartisan 12-member group in Congress right now. And he will say that tax increases are not an option for this group. And as you know, they're working toward identifying about $1.5 trillion in deficit savings over the next decade. To achieve anything of that magnitude or even greater than that without including some kind of tax increases will be a challenging task. And so the Speaker today, in laying down this marker, is pretty significantly changing the conversation that this committee will have.
Well, just a question then about the fate of the President's job plan, even as he was on the road in North Carolina yesterday selling it to voters. It sounds as though the components of the Speaker's address are very different from the President. Comprehensive tax reform as opposed to very significant incidental or areas of the tax code that the President is suggesting, both to continue tax breaks and to fund the package with some tax increases. So where does that leave the politics of this discussion?
Yeah, that's correct, and that's a great point, because the politics here is very tricky. I mean, this Deficit Reduction Committee has only about a little over a month in order to achieve its goal. They've had 2 meetings so far, and at their most recent one this week, the Congressional Budget Office Director, Doug Elmendorf, basically told them they need to have their plan together by the end of October. In order for this group to do something as big as comprehensive tax reform, they might need to take a little bit longer time than that. So by the Speaker laying out this plan today, he might be setting the bar somewhat high for this group. But the Speaker is also expected to say that when it comes to job creation, that House Republicans are still open to some aspects of the President's plan. And they've been sparring with the White House back and forth on whether that plan should come to Congress as a whole and whether members should pass that as one package in its entirety, or as congressional Republicans prefer, if they can sort of look at it a la carte and find the parts of it that they like. So there's a pretty clear contrast there. One other thing that will be happening this morning ahead of the Speaker's speech this afternoon is that the 12-member super committee on debt reduction is having its first private meeting. That's at 8:30 this morning on the Senate side of the Capitol. So this will be their first closed-door meeting. They may be previewing this Boehner speech and sort of seeing how this will be mapping out the road ahead for them, but it definitely does make their task somewhat more complicated.
Well, thank you very much for setting the stage for the Deficit Committee getting down to work behind closed doors, and for Speaker Boehner's job speech here in Washington today. Thanks for your time.
And again, Speaker Boehner giving his job speech this afternoon at 1 Eastern here in Washington. We are planning coverage on the C-SPAN networks. You will be able to see it in its entirety on our website, cspan.org. The House right now in the midst of a bill to limit the National Labor Relations Board Authority. They are voting on a procedural motion related to the bill. This bill is the result of the NLRB's legal action against the Boeing Company, again after the company moved from Washington State to South Carolina. The NLRB alleging that that move is an attempt to get around the union, and it's asking a judge to require Boeing to open a manufacturing line in Washington State. Following this vote, we expect a vote on the rule and a vote on a bill debated earlier reauthorizing the International Religious Freedom Act. It's a suspension bill that was debated earlier. The House will then swear in new members. We expect general debate on the NLRB bill, and then we expect a vote on final passage. While this vote is underway, we'll go to a segment from this morning's Washington Journal where we offered a roundtable discussion on President Obama's proposals to pay for his jobs legislation. Again, from this morning's Washington Journal.
This Thursday, we're back, and our focus for the next hour and 15 of this Washington Journal is going to be taking the major provisions of the President's jobs plan that have to do with the revenue-raising side, the tax increases he is proposing, and the pros and cons of them. Let me introduce you to the two guests at our table who will be part of our discussion this morning. On my left, Michael Ettlinger is Vice President for Economic Policy at the Center for American Progress. Thanks for being here. And Chris Edwards, on my right, Tax Policy Studies Director for the Cato Institute. He also edits a internet site called downsizinggovernment.org, was a senior economist at the Joint Economic Committee before coming to the Cato Institute. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to dive right into it and begin with what is the largest revenue raiser, President Obama's plan to cap itemized deductions for high earners. The President says that doing this will raise $400 billion, and according to Bloomberg News. And the specifics about this, if we can put them on screen, is the President proposes to cap itemized deductions at 28% of income, and this would apply to individuals earning $200,000 or more and couples earning $250,000 or more. Well, let me start by asking you how this differs from current policy.
Well, under current policy, we have this strange system of upside-down subsidies, whereby people in the highest marginal tax bracket, 35%, when they, say, take their mortgage interest deduction, they're in effect getting a 35% subsidy from the government. They're getting 35% of their mortgage interest paid for by the federal government in the form, and they're getting the money in the form of reduced taxes. And whereas someone in the 25% bracket or the 10% bracket or other lower brackets get lower levels of subsidy. And just sticking with the mortgage interest example, no one who is designing a subsidy for home ownership outside of sort of our weird system would ever give higher percentage subsidies to wealthier people than middle-income people. And so what the President is trying to do is level that. Instead, so that what he's doing is he's saying people in the 35% bracket, you don't get the whole 35%. You're capped at 28%.
Other countries, just our neighbor to the north, for example, give no deductions whatsoever for mortgage interest. Can you tell us a little bit about why they're thinking that there should be any in this country?
Well, I think it comes initially from the desire to promote a home ownership. I mean, home ownership obviously has a value, and I think one thing to remember is it's really become embedded in our system. So we have proposed a plan that reduces the level of subsidy, but it would be a real shock to the housing system to just get rid of it in one fell swoop. And I don't think that's on the President's agenda at all. I think what he's intending is for that and for the range of deductions just trying to level it so it's not this perverse upside-down system that just, really doesn't make any sense to anybody.
Well, staying specifically with the mortgage interest deduction, considering the state of the housing market right now, people that are against this suggest it doesn't need any more shocks to its system. We ought to be promoting it. How would you respond to that?
Well, I think, A, the best way to promote the housing sector is not by offering subsidies to higher income people who that isn't the troubled part of the market. So I don't think that this is some disastrous shock to the system. I think it's, again, just getting rid of what is a really perverse subsidy.
Mr. Edwards, staying with the mortgage interest deduction, we'll go through other controversial debates over the mortgage interest, the itemized deduction limitation. But on mortgage interest, we've already, as a country, as policymakers, trimmed this back. It used to be for any mortgage years ago that you had, and the Congress limited. Why not make further limitations to it, specifically in the area of mortgage interest?
Well, in the long run, I'd like to simplify the tax code and get rid of all these sorts of credits and deductions and use the revenue to lower overall tax rates. That would reduce distortions across the playing field. And as you point out, countries like Canada and Australia, they don't have mortgage interest deductions, and their home ownership rate is just as high as ours here in the United States. In general, what President Obama is doing here is, I think he's proposing these new tax credits and deductions in his jobs bill, so he's making the tax code more complicated that way. Then he's putting these limitations on deductions in the tax bill as well, which complexifies the tax code further. So I don't like his overall policy here. I think he should be reducing complexity in the tax code and lowering overall rates.
There are two sectors of the economy who are already looking at this particular provision and raising concerns about it. One is charities. And, for example, Wall Street Journal, why Obama's jobs bill could be bad for charity. Limits would likely reduce charitable giving, says the newspaper, because deductions are a big reason the rich give, despite the fact that the wealthy say they give out of kindness, not tax breaks. And if they deduct less, they will give less. What's your response?
Yeah, this is something that people have studied, and I think the evidence doesn't really support that. That, in fact, the rich do give out of kindness, and that it is not just to chase tax breaks. I mean, obviously, it's somewhat subsidized, but it's not the primary motivation. They still lose the money. So I don't think that that's a cause really for great concern. And I do think that, you have to remember that these changes in the tax code are paying for something, right? So it's not we're just raising these taxes on a whim. And that if you look at the other side of the ledger here, all the job creation that's going to be made, the reductions in taxes in terms of payroll tax, which are tax provisions, is really directly tied to creating jobs. When you look at, helping with the unemployed, I mean, when you look at all the provisions on the spending side of this, you really have to look at it as a balancing act. And I think on balance, there's really not much question in my mind that it's A, good for the country, B, good for most of the purposes that charitable institutions care about.
On this program, we have already looked at the other side of the ledger and looked at the job-stimulating proposals the President made. Today, we're trying to understand the implications of how he intends to pay for it through the tax codes. But with questions and comments in a few minutes, we'll take both sides of the ledger if you're interested. Let me ask you to comment on the overall. Do you believe the President's plan will, in fact, stimulate jobs?
No, I'm completely against just about every part of the President's job bill. He wants to put in place a temporary payroll tax cut. I don't think companies hire people based on temporary sort of breaks they get. I think they hire people based on, looking at their long-term investments. If they build a new factory, then they need new workers to man that factory, then they hire. So, and even if you think a company would marginally add a few extra workers because of this payroll tax cut the President's proposing, wouldn't they then fire them in a year when the tax credit runs out? That doesn't make any sense to me. He's also proposed a few other sort of narrow breaks. If companies, hire people, then they get a special $4,000 tax break and the like. That doesn't make any sense to me. I think the President, he complains about business tax loopholes, and yet he's proposing to add new business tax loopholes to the code. I think we should focus on overall reductions in marginal tax rates and making the tax code more efficient.
Let me go back to the limitation on itemized deductions, 28%. And again, two other sectors. One, if you would comment, please, on charitable deductions and its effect on giving. Do you believe it would have one?
I think there would be a modest effect on charitable giving. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't get rid of it in terms of overall tax reform. I would say, I mean, the charity deduction is probably less distortionary, it seems to me, than something like the mortgage interest deduction. The mortgage interest deduction causes large amounts, hundreds of billions of dollars of extra resources to move into this one industry, housing, and we've seen the problem that that has created. Whereas a charitable deduction, sort of, it doesn't you know, create this distortion for one particular industry or activity that is really damaging to the economy. So, you know, I would get rid of the charitable deduction in terms of overall tax reform. I don't see any real reason to go picking on it right now.
Another sector is health care, and if the itemized deductions are limited to 28% for high-income earners, here is some of what's been written on conservative blogs. In addition, this tax increase limits most itemized, non-itemized deductions and exclusions for these taxpayers, in particular for employer-provided health insurance, health savings accounts, and self-employed health insurance premiums. If, in fact, this is passed and this happens, what effect will it be on people being insured for health?
It'll have a marginal effect. Again, ultimately, we want to get rid of the distortion in the tax code that the tax code creates on the healthcare industry. But I think we should do that in terms of an overall tax reform. I think adding in these sorts of narrow limitations make the tax code more complex and doesn't really reform the overall healthcare system.
When some people get breaks for health savings accounts and for their health insurance premiums, what does it do to the health insurance economy?
Well, it makes it easier for people to get health insurance. And I think, again, what the President's trying to do, though, is there's no particular reason why we think higher income people should get more help getting health insurance than middle or lower income people. And again, I think that is, in terms of tax reform, I think that's the objective here. And, I agree with Chris that the tax system is complicated, and it shouldn't be made more complicated. I think of this actually as kind of a down payment on broader tax reform. You're starting to move to a more level set of subsidization, which is sort of where we end up with bigger and broader tax reform.
Let me move on to another provision, and this one has been getting a lot of discussion in financial newspapers, and that is the President's plan to tax income of investment managers at individual rates, not capital gains rates. They propose that this will bring in about $18 billion in revenue. Here is an item, for example, in this morning's New York Times. The tax item in the jobs bill raises some hackles among private equity executives. What's this all about?
Well, basically, private equity managers are able to shelter what is really their earnings. I mean, what they make for doing their job as capital gains and get the preferential 15% capital gains tax rate instead of the tax rates everyone else pays. So what this is about is simply, preventing them from playing that game and paying the same level of taxes that other people pay on what are their earnings from their jobs.
Comments, please.
This is a so-called tax increase on what's called carried interest. Companies structured as partnerships, for example, venture capital companies, the managers of these companies get usually 20% on the deal income of investments from these companies, and it's treated as capital gains income. And it is sort of a gray issue. I think there's a debate whether this income that venture capitalists and other partnerships get is really labor income or capital income. The President wouldn't raise very much money from this provision, and I think it is a little dangerous. I mean, companies that are organized like this, venture capital companies, have been organized like this for many decades, and they've helped fund Silicon Valley startups like Apple and many other great companies over the decades. So I think we're playing with fire here if we start hiking taxes on businesses that really are job creators in the economy. So I'd be quite hesitant to go ahead with that sort of a tax increase.
I want to put a couple more of the major provisions on the screen, and then we'll begin taking your calls, and you can also send us a tweet at C-SPAN WJ if you'd like to. Next one is about corporate jets. Corporate jets have been part of the political rhetoric for a couple of years here in Washington, D.C. What the President's plan proposes to do to raise $3 billion in revenue is to limit the tax breaks for corporate jet owners. Reading some of the chatter about this provision on the Internet, people who are against it suggest that it will do the same thing for the private plane industry that many years ago the tax changes for the boat industry did, which has depressed that industry in a bad economy. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, he would reduce the depreciation deduction for corporate jets, and this is an odd sort of a provision. The President, in his amongst his tax increases here, he reduces depreciation deductions for not only for corporate jets, but in various energy, for various parts of the energy industry. Oddly, at the same time, he's proposing to extend what's called 100% expensing. He would allow certain companies to write off all their investments first year on the one hand, but on the other hand, he's reducing depreciation deductions for certain other industries. So his tax policy is directly contradicting, directly contradictory. I'm ultimately for businesses writing off their investments completely first year, which is called expensing. So whether it's corporate jets or energy industry equipment, let's allow companies to write it off first years, and I think we'd increase investment in the economy.
Perhaps it makes sense for you to take both the corporate jets and the energy provisions all in one as well.
I would just say, first of all, I think again, it's a leveling of the playing field, right? I mean, we have sort of without getting into the details, the corporate jets have sort of gotten an excessive level of depreciation, and so we're fixing that and raising revenue. Yes, he's doing expensing as well, but that is, I would think, would be what you'd want, Chris. I mean, he's doing expensing across the board, which, again, that affects everybody. So I think it's correcting some distortions while providing an incentive to invest during this period of where we're short on investment. I think people are arguing, well, it's going to hurt the corporate jet industry. Well, we could have the government buy every executive in the country his own corporate jet, and we'd help the corporate jet industry. But that hardly would be a good use of dollars. And again, I know we're focusing on the taxes here, but the point here is how this money is being spent. And it's being spent in ways that will create many, many, many more jobs than any, frankly, I doubt any, would be lost in the corporate jet industry.
Well, before we...
And you can see the remainder of that segment in the C-SPAN video library. Members of the House now voting on a procedural motion related to a bill restricting National Labor Relations Board. Following this, we expect a vote on the rule for debate on the NLRB bill. Assuming that rule is approved, we expect to move on to general debate. And following this, next vote, a suspension bill dealing with authorization of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Watching live coverage of the House here on C-SPAN.
Have all members voted? Does any member wish to change their vote?
Off aye on no for Mr. Honda and Mr. Tonko. Off no on aye for Mr. McIntyre.
We got Sherman in the I don't know if they have Charlie Randall in place yet. You want to wait? I'll go try and find out what's going on.
Mr. Sherman. Off aye on no for Mr. Sherman. Mr. Larson of Connecticut. Off aye on no for Mr. Larson of Connecticut.
Who's coming down the aisle?
No, we got it.
Does it look static? Yeah. Okay. Close, DeAndre.
On this vote,
The yeas are 234, the nays are 177. The previous question is ordered. The chair would ask the members to vacate the floor of the House, the well of the House, please. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir. I have the honor to transmit herewith a scanned copy of a letter received from Mr. Scott Gillis, Deputy Secretary of Elections, on behalf of Nevada Secretary of State, the Honorable Ross Miller, indicating that, according to the unofficial returns of the special election held September 13, 2011, the Honorable Mark E. Amodei was elected representative to Congress for the 2nd Congressional District, State of Nevada. With best wishes, I am, signed sincerely, Karen L. Haas, Clerk.
The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir. I have the honor to transmit herewith a scanned copy of a letter received from Mr. Robert Brim and Mr. Todd Valentine, co-executive directors, New York State Board of Elections, indicating that, according to the unofficial returns of the special election held September 13, 2011, the Honorable Bob Turner was elected representative to Congress for the 9th Congressional District, State of New York. With best wishes, I am, signed sincerely, Karen L. Haas, Clerk.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Nevada seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the gentleman from Nevada, the Honorable Mark Amodei, be permitted to take the oath of office today. His certificate of election has not yet arrived, but there is no contest and no question has been raised with regard to his election.
Without objection, so ordered. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise? Mr. Rankin.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the gentleman from New York, the Honorable Bob Turner, be permitted to take the oath of office today. His certificate of election has not yet arrived, but I'm not aware of any reason why the House should not see him sworn in today.
Without objection, so ordered. Will the representatives-elect and the members of their respective delegations present themselves in the well of the House? Members will now rise. The representatives-elect, if you'll both raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you are about to enter, so help you God? Congratulations. You are now members. 112th Congress. Without objection, the House will be in order. Without objection, the gentlelady from Nevada, Ms. Berkeley, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, it is my great pleasure to welcome Representative Amodei to Congress. Our new colleague is a native son of Nevada and a graduate of the University of Nevada, where he served in the ROTC program and later served on active duty in the Army, first in artillery and then as a JAG officer. He has worked for the people of Nevada for many years as an assemblyman and as a member of the state Senate. I look forward to working with the gentleman as we represent the citizens of the great state of Nevada, and I would now yield to my colleague and friend, Representative Hecht.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. I, too, want to offer my congratulations to Mark Amodei. I had the honor of serving alongside him in the state Senate, where he distinguished himself as President pro tem and a member of the Natural Resources Committee, where he was the go-to guy on a lot of issues important to Nevada regarding water law, grazing rights, public lands issues. A fellow veteran, it's an honor to have him here. I wish him well, and I ask the entire House to welcome him as well. Thank you so much. I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield to the gentleman from Nevada, Representative Mark Amodei.
Gentleman from Nevada is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, brand new colleagues, for your courtesies. I will endeavor to do the best I can to bring honor to this House and help you with the work that we have to do. And I was told that the longer you talk, the less popular you are, so I yield back my time. Thank you very much.
Without objection, the House will be in order. Without objection, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Rangel, is recognized.
Most of us know that we are honored, so honored to be members of this august body, and that whenever we have an election, the one winner clearly are members of the Congress, the Constitution, and our great country. We from New York have the special history of not being partisan and working together for our districts, our communities, our country. And Peter King has been here long enough to remember the days when adversaries could also be friends. So on behalf of the Congress and the New York delegation, we all welcome the Honorable Bob Turner in joining our group, and we in the state delegation look forward to working with him. At this time, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield to my friend, my distinguished friend, Peter King from the great state of New York.
Thank you, Congressman Rangel. As all of you know, this is not something we're used to doing in New York. But it's a great moment. It's a great moment for New York. It's a great moment for the people of the 9th Congressional District. And it's a special privilege for me to be able to introduce our newly elected member. Bob Turner is an Army veteran. He was an extremely successful businessman. Most importantly, he's the proud husband of Peggy, proud father of 5 children, proud grandfather of 13 children, and I can tell you, a great friend and a great human being. He's going to make an outstanding congressman, and I am so proud to be here today with Bob Turner. As I've been during the years I've come to know him and to respect him, he's going to be a truly, truly outstanding addition to this body and a great fighter for the people of New York. With that, Chairman Rangel.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the great privilege of bringing to you our newly elected member, the Honorable Bob Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Congressman Rangel. Thank you, Congressman King.
The gentleman from New York, Mr. Turner, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, it's with true humility I accept this awesome responsibility. And I pledge not to forget how I got here. It was an important bipartisan election. It's the only way that can be done in New York City. And I also promise not to forget why I'm here. And it's the future, which is ably represented here by these handsome grandchildren, not even the whole brood. Well, all right. Follow a good example and be brief. Thank you.
Under Clause 5D of Rule 20, the Chair announces to the House that in light of the administration of the oath to the gentleman from Nevada and the gentleman from New York, the whole number of the House is now 434. Without objection, 5-minute voting will continue. The question is on adoption of House Resolution 372. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker,
The gentlelady from New York.
I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. It's a 5-minute vote.
So you just saw two new members sworn in today, Republican Mark Amodei of Nevada and Bob Turner of New York, also Republican, just 2 days after they won elections, actually 2 days after Mark Amodei won elections. He replaces Dean Heller, who is now in the Senate, and that would be Mr. Turner. Mr. Amodei's election was expected to Nevada's 2nd Congressional District. Mr. Turner is a former cable TV executive. He beat Democratic State Assemblyman David Weprin in that race for New York's 9th Congressional District. It's the seat vacated by Congressman Anthony Weiner, who quit due to a sexting scandal. And, of course, that brings the total member in the House to 242 Republicans, 192 Democrats. Members now voting on the rule for debating a bill restricting the National Labor Relations Board. Assuming the rule is approved, we expect to move on to general debate. And following this next vote on a suspension bill dealing with authorization of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom.
Vote, the yeas are 239, the nays are 176. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion from the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Smith, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2867 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 20